Hey guys, I'm Cherry Holmes here with the FujiNet project, and I wanted to show you a little demo here showing how powerful the end device can be for doing more actual real work. In this case, we're actually going to be modifying files on a real web server through HTTP WEBDAV, being funneled through the end device, with translation being applied so that text will actually wind up with the correct line endings. Really push this forward, we're going to make these modifications to a web page entirely in AtariWriter. We can see right here that we have on the left-hand side an Atari with FujiNet loaded here. DOSXL is in the slot here. I'm just doing this for the sake of brevity. And on the right-hand side, we have a Chrome window that has the web page that we're going to modify, the index, for a local web server that I have running here on my Raspberry Pi alongside my TNFS server. These two directories for the web server and the TNFS server are in two completely different places on the Raspberry Pi. The file systems are not accessible. I did this to prove a point. These files are completely separated out. And the only way I can modify the files on the web server is through WEBDAV, which I've turned on. So with that, we'll go ahead, boot into OSS DOSXL because we have to set up a couple of things. I'm using DOSXL here for the sake of brevity, just so I can quickly type in the commands and get in and get out. But you can just as easily set this up in DOS2, in MyDOS, in SpartaDOS. It does not matter. It works everywhere. First, we're going to go ahead and set the network directory over to my web server. Again, this will work over HTTPS. I just don't have it set up on my web server here. It's a local web server, so it doesn't really make much sense. Whatever. So with that, we can verify that we're here by looking at the directory there. And this, again, what's actually happening here is it's determining whether or not it can make WEBDAV requests, and if it can, it does a prop find to get all of the files in that directory, parses the resulting XML on the FujiNet itself, and sends back a nice cleanly formatted directory string here so that I can see. This will work inside of AtariWriter too. See in just a moment. The file that we want to deal with there is index.htm. Now, this is actually called index.html on the web server, but the crunch algorithm that's being used to convert these to 8 and 3 is actually translating the file name for me into something that is palatable for DOS2. And I can open and modify and write the file as appropriate, and the FujiNet will try to resolve the file in 8.3 form if it can't open the full file name for one reason or another, for compatibility reasons. So with that, now that we have the NCD set, we want to take and do one more thing here. We want to run a tool called intrans. And intrans is a tool, like the rest of the in tools. It's either CLI or menu-based, depending on what operating system it's running under. And we want to set the line mode to carriage return line feed for the end device. This will allow for that index.htm file that's in ASCII with carriage return line feed endings to properly be interpreted by the Atari. We can verify that we've done this by opening up the index.htm file. And as you can see, we can see the source code to that right there. And if we wanted to, we could use copy E: to write the file out right here. We're going to use AtariWriter. That, I actually need to open up my OBS panel here because my capture device is going to go offline the moment I pull the display off here. Let me insert my cartridge. I will temporarily deactivate my display here, let the Atari come back online, and when I reactivate, we should see my menu. There we go. So we're going to use a version of AtariWriter where I have patched 1 byte of the binary so that the index mode will actually work. Either version of AtariWriter will work just fine for this purpose. I just made a slight modification so that the index will actually default to encode. No big deal there. And we'll boot into AtariWriter. So again, because the DOS disk that I'm booting from has the N handler on it, it will load the handler and everything will come up just as expected. And because I've patched AtariWriter here to default to the N device, if I do an index of the disk files, I will see the index on my web server. We can see our index.html file right there. No, I don't want to print the directory, but I do want to load index.html. It finds, resolves the file, and then subsequently loads it into place. And there we are. We have our HTML file, and we can go down. We'll go ahead and add something to this just to do it. Go ahead and end that tag right there. With that, escape, we'll save the file. And once the file is saved, we can then see the result by going over into Chrome and move this over here so I can manipulate it there. And refresh the page. And there we go. Looks like we added an additional little special character right there on accident, but you can see right there, we modified the page here on the Atari, literally without much thought here. Well, if we do it again, pull again, looks like there's some bits and pieces I still need to debug there. Okay. Oh well. We load it back in, I want to see what actually happened here. You can see that there's still some bits and pieces that we need to resolve. But the translation is basically changing the line endings and making everything as efficient as possible. Interesting. Put Control E here. Very interesting. So it looks like I still have more work to do, but you can see already the power of what's possible here, especially once I get all the bits and pieces debugged. We're able to take and modify the files on our Ataris, pull them directly and push them directly back up to our web servers. So with that, I'll leave you guys, and until next time, have fun.